full of surprises and miracles, and it takes each of you to do that and make it what it is. Now, financial support, of course, is an important part of that. And you support the church in so many other ways, from helping out on committees, or the board, or with events, or helping with the kids. And we're all essential stewards of this holy place. But in closing, of course, we have our slogan, "Are you in?" With our in words this year. And it occurred to me that I would just add one more in word, and that's that you are indispensable. We need you here. Like they say, half the battle is just showing up. So that's easy. Thank you for being part of our church. We will always need each and every one of you. Every one of us, right? Happy accident there. And I would just ask you to ask yourself, as you're considering your pledges this year, to remember that you're stewards of a very special place, and to remember those experiences that have made it special for you as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mark. Appreciate it. Okay, so our reading, we are going to have a reading called A Prayer for America by Tamara Labak.
What about the hymn?
Oh, I'm sorry. I get excited about these readings. So our first hymn, first hymn today is from the Teal hymnal, number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do, and we're going to sing 4 verses. So please rise in body and spirit to sing together.
Got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 Got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance, oh Lord. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 Laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you gotta laugh, oh Lord. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 Spirit says laugh.
A Prayer for America by Tamara Labak. God of many names, you who has endowed us with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the spirit of happiness, a pursuit of happiness. Let us remember that this day, that in this country there is no national religion, there is no superior race, There is no preferable gender or orientation. We gather holding a common value that the glory of this country rests first and foremost in its diversity. Out of many ideas, out of many beliefs, out of many views, out of many voices, out of many passions, out of many experiences, we are one. Help us, O God, to never forget that we need not be alike, to live and love alike. We ask for a blessing on this nation, and according to our own faith and forms, and pledge our voice in support of moving closer to freedom for all. Amen. Danielle Ware worked for over 20 years in the automotive industry, holding various positions in manufacturing assembly line supervision, electrical engineering, systems product development, cost strategy, and program management. Her consistent advocacy for diversity, equity, and inclusion work within the automotive industry led her to follow her passions and start the nonprofit Danica Community Development, Inc., DCDI, as well as to help found the Community Equity Organization. Danica Community Development focuses on supporting the community and building a solid foundation by increasing their knowledge base in financial education, wealth management, workforce preparation, and health and wellness. Community Equity Organization focuses on the active social justice work to bring about change in our communities that sees every community member having equitable access to resources and to be treated with dignity and respect. Please welcome Danielle Ware.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Happy Easter. I told them I was going to walk, so I'm going to step away from that mic because I think I'm on and I don't want to have feedback. Where do I begin? The topic is moving to action to create change. That's the topic. As many of you have not been living under a rock, but forced to live in your homes exclusively for the last 2.5 years with COVID, you've had an opportunity to see injustice and inequity play out in various forms. community equity organization came out as a physical manifestation of some of that inequity. It didn't come out because of that particular inequity in 2020, but it came out because of a realization that no matter what we do in terms of being nice to one another, there are people who actively work to make sure each person doesn't have the same access to resources and needs as the next person. And they create tiered systems, they create classism, they create ways that make us feel divided and not a community. And that's what we're supposed to be, community. Hence the name community equity. We want each and every person to have the same access to resources at the level of what they need. Because what I need might not be what you need. So today I'm going to do my level best to get you thinking about how you need to move to action and show you where just because you might not be the one actively creating harm to the next individual doesn't mean that your silence or your inability to move forward isn't creating harm to those same people. Does that make sense? No? Well, all right. Then come along with me on the journey and hopefully I'll help it make sense to you. So, provided I do this right, I might not be doing it right. You might have to show me the down arrow. Thank you. A little bit about me. Aside from what was shared in my bio, I am a mother of two beautiful daughters. I am a community member here in Farmington Hills. Sports has been my thing since I could go to school. So I've played almost every sport there is. I love to cook. I love to eat, in case you haven't noticed. And I absolutely love karaoke. I love to sing. So I was very bummed when the pandemic started because my hangout was to go to a restaurant that had karaoke and eat, sing, and drink. Loved it. But what it did bring rise to is nori bongs. Does anyone know what a nori bong is? A nori bong is the Japanese version of karaoke, where you go into a room and instead of like going into a bar or a restaurant where any stranger can watch you sing, they have rooms set up. And you and your loved ones, family members, can go into that little room and sing your hearts out among people that know you and may or may not make fun of you while you're singing. So for shyer people, it allows me to get some of my loved ones out with me to do karaoke. But I absolutely love karaoke. I created an organization called Danica Community Development Incorporated, and it operates here out of Farmington Hills. It is a community-based organization meant to help fill in the gaps for different community members, no matter what it is that's going on in your life. So, for example, we offer financial literacy classes to our teenagers, and we will begin offering them to adults, because 90% of people struggle in financial literacy. They don't have that education. And it is what led our governor to sign a law last year to make it mandatory that high school students graduate with some financial literacy classes. This is one of the biggest things that harms us as a community. So we look forward to not having to fill that gap anymore with the execution of this law. We also partner with First Presbyterian Church, and we offer resume writing and interviewing. We have different community members that need that help. Maybe they're trying to change careers. Maybe they are new here from another country and they need help creating resumes and practicing interviewing for what is looked for in our American industry. Maybe they're high school students and they need them. We focus on filling the gaps. While I was building that, it occurred to me that no matter how much I fill the gaps when people say, oh, that person doesn't have the right education, they don't have the right knowledge base on something, that they still have the ability to withhold access to a resource for any weird thing that they make up, based and built on their biases. So CEO came about, Community Equity Organization came about because we realized we have to find a way to break down the social injustices that exist so that when people go forward, they have fair and equal access to the things that are meant to help each community member. And that in that way, we're stronger. So that's a little bit about me. Barb, I'd like to thank for inviting me, Barb Eglinton. I did it. Yes. I've been practicing since yesterday. Barb sent me a note and she invited me at a prompting maybe of Jenny Teed, who I work with in social justice. But she also told me a little bit about your church and your belief, your religions, and pointed me to the 7 principles. And I took a good read and I thought, I see it. I see the education piece and I see the action piece. In your 7 principles, you have 3 things that should lead you to action. And those things are justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, the right of consciousness, of conscious and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. I'm going to speak a lot about bullet 3. I really am. Bullet 3, bullet 3 sums it up about my statement of how you cannot go out of your way to harm the next person, but your inactivity, your inaction can create violence and pain to that very person you weren't trying to harm. And I'll give you some examples. And I just gave this example to Barb, so I'm going to start with that one. In elections, right, people forget the personable part of an election. Don't think about the president, who you may or may not ever meet. But who's running the local government? Who's running the state government? Those people, you might live next door to them. You might go to the same school, the same church, the same workplace as them, and they want to run for office. And you might know that that person says some sketchy things about different groups of people, different beliefs, that would mean if they were in charge and given a little bit of power, they might use it in a way that harms certain groups of people. You know that. So in your mind, you say, I'll have a beer with them, I'll break bread with them, but I wouldn't vote for them. Well, here's where the harm comes in, because you didn't harm them by understanding that you wouldn't vote for them, but where you harmed those people that you want to help is you didn't tell anybody else. You didn't go to your brother, your mother, your next door neighbor and say, hey, not to be political, but if you believe in treating everyone with dignity and respect, you believe that everyone should have equitable access to resources and that they should be able to not just live, but thrive, let me share with you what I truly know about that individual. When you don't do that, you leave the rest of us who don't have that same access as you. You leave us to have to go based on what they say in public, and what they say in public isn't always a true reflection of who they are. That's why we always feel like we got buyer's remorse, right? You vote somebody in the office, they say, hey, I believe in the rights of the LGBTQ community. And then next thing you know, they're sponsoring a bill to make sure all trans children can't play sports. And you're left thinking, well, how did we get there? Now, how did we get there? And then when I come talk to you about it, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, when we're at dinner, he or she says all kinds of disparaging things about the LGBTQ community. And you're thinking, man, I wish I had known that, because that would have informed me to do something different, right? So when you think about what's going on in the world today and you have to cast your vote, sometimes it's bigger than just casting your vote. It's also how you help educate the community. These are ways you can move to action, and some of those ways aren't necessarily confrontational, because the average individual is not looking for confrontation, right? You want to help people. You want to make sure that everyone has the right to go about their way without any harm. But you might not want to be the one out there picketing and protesting and doing all of this other stuff. There are ways you can help that doesn't cost you an overactive way or create you in an uncomfortable situation of confrontation. Uh-oh, see, I did it. I told y'all. I knew I would mess it up. All right. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. It really goes hand in hand with the last one, the last bullet point that I just talked about. But there are other ways in your human relations, right? When you see someone, I liked the people, the announcements that talked about homelessness, talked about bailing out, the moms bail out, so you're doing fundraisers for that. That's awesome. Those are actions. Those are ways that in your human relation, you make sure these people feel seen, and then you try to help them in the way that you can. But what else can you do? Well, in a human relation, I'm going to use Black people as an example because I'm Black and I'm standing in front of you. So we can live in a beautiful town or city like Farmington Hills. And just like you, we might be living in a $200,000 or $300,000 house. And just like you, we're paying taxes. And just like you, we have access to the parks. And just like you, we have access to our wonderful library. But unlike you, when we go into these spaces sometimes, someone calls the cops on us. Could be walking down the street in our own neighborhood or out cutting your own grass, and the police roll up and ask for identification and why are you here? Now, it doesn't seem like that's happening here in Farmington Hills, does it? Because this is a really beautiful place. But it does. And the problem that we have in human relations is that while you like me. I keep my grass cut, and I'm not out here blasting music at all hours of the night. My kids aren't running amok. When I tell you I'm experiencing a harm or an injustice, your choice is to not believe me. And so when you make that choice, and I'm over here trying to advocate for myself in the Black community, it allows and gives space for the local government, for example, because in this example, we're talking about the police, to say, no one else has ever said anything like that, so it must not be true. And you think to yourself, but I live here, and I'm sharing with you my experience. So in that moment that they disregard what I've said, I don't have any help, right? How can you move to action in this example? It's not a confrontation, but sometimes it's going to the city council meeting, sending an email that says, hey, I am aware of this issue happening in our community. And while we have wonderful things going on in this community, we have great amenities, my neighbor is having a problem. Or this particular cultural or ethnic group in our community is having this issue. We would like for you to look into it and address it with them. They're asking for your help. You'd be amazed at how responsive our local government is, and actually probably all of the cities in the state of Michigan, because I can only speak for Michigan, because I've only lived here in Michigan, at how responsive they are when multiple community members speak up. Even if it's just to figure out a way to lie their way out of it, they still respond. And there is help in numbers. So when we talk about justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, it's that compassion piece. Are you showing compassion when you are speaking to other groups of people that are having an issue, and then finding a way to help to move to action? And again, all action doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be so over the top. There are people who will do what they can get away with until you tell them you see them. And then all of a sudden, they stop until they can figure out a better way to do it and not be seen. But the point is, there are a lot of times that we can help one another with simple, easy action items that don't move you to left or right out of your comfort zone. And I can't stress enough about comfort zone, because I'm going to tell you, advocacy is not for the weak. It's just not. We don't like to hear no. I don't like to hear no ever, but we don't like to hear no. We don't like to put ourselves out there where someone can demean us or be mean to us in some way, or just, be unkind. We don't like that. Belittle. Perfect word. We don't want to be belittled because it messes with us. It drives anxiety. And so we try to keep our footprint small. But you can't keep your footprint small if you want your community to thrive and be strong. If you have one person being harmed, your community is not thriving and being strong. You have a crack. And a crack is weakness. And the more cracks that arise, eventually it's going to explode. We don't want that. We want to invest in our community. We want to invest in our neighbors and our people. And we also want to live if you're religious. And I say that this way because I recognize that everybody is not religious. And that's okay. I'm Baptist, but I was raised in a Catholic school, so technically I'm Baptist Catholic. Because I did it all. I'm a woman of a certain age where we had to go to school and church multiple times during the week. So, we did it all. But everybody's not religious, and that's okay. Some people have spiritual beliefs that lead to good moral character. But if a part of your spiritual belief and your good moral character is to stand next to the person burning to death and do nothing, then are you really of good moral character? That's not what God called us to do, and I am not a preacher, so I am not about to preach to you. Let me be clear, there's no reverend in front of my name. But I do believe in God, and I do believe many of you here, based on the readings and the songs, believe in God. And He doesn't ask us to stand next to our fellow man and do nothing when they're harmed. And so we should ask that of each person, but we should also give space and grace for each person to find where their action can be. Your action might be to write a letter to a particular issue that's happening and to make your voice heard. The next person's might be to protest, to hit the streets with their signs and all. I'm not that person. I would just tell you, I'm not walking up and down the street. But there's value in what they're doing. And just because that's not my comfort zone doesn't mean I can't find a place and a space to advocate. And that's what I challenge each one of you to do. And actually, that is a part of acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. Because if you can accept what you hear from your neighbor they're experiencing. If you come to me and you say, hey, Danielle, I know you don't have this problem, and you don't even have to say, I know you don't have this problem. You can just say what your problem is. Maybe COVID caused your level of living to change. Maybe you lost your job, and everybody doesn't know that. Now you can't afford groceries. And so it was important when the COVID dollars were coming in and the schools were able to offer and send home the boxes of vegetables and dairy products and fruit. Maybe that helped you. Just because that wasn't my experience doesn't mean I shouldn't accept that you had that experience. My action is to accept it and to create a space for you to thrive, to move forward, right? To create a space to say, okay, well, that happened to you. How can I help you? You might not even be asking me for help. You might just be asking me to listen and understand. But you also, if you need help, could be saying, hey, those ESSER funds that the federal government is getting rid of, some of us still need it. Would you please write a letter? To whom? In our case with ESSER funds, it would be the school district. The school district still has the ESSER funds. Farmington Public Schools has not spent all of their ESSER funds. And so there are people who could still use the food that, came in the boxes. Farmington Hills was one of the districts that kind of ended that a little earlier. Our neighbors, I think that's to the west of us, is West Bloomfield. I'm not really good with directions, right? Listen, Google Maps is my friend, and I Google map my way here. So. But West Bloomfield, they continued to do it all the way to the end of last year. So neighbors, I know of neighbors that live here in Farmington Hills that drove right on up Orchard Lake and went to West Bloomfield to get the boxes because they needed them. And unfortunately, this happens all too often, that once our children are out of school, we don't quite pay attention to what's happening in the school district. But we still paying our taxes. Our taxes are still going to the school district. And so we should care, just as community members, how they're being used, and if they're being used equitably, to make sure every student is getting what they need. Every household, every family is getting what they need. We have that power. Because if you've lived here for at least 7 years, you've been through 2 requests for the assessments to pay to give the school district more money, right? You've been through at least 2, because I've been through at least 2. And you have to say to yourself, like the question I asked on the second assessment was, what did you do with the money on the first assessment? Because you told me that was to improve the infrastructure, right? Replace old boilers, make sure that heating and cooling is good for the children, that we upgrade to new things like green screens and stuff that can educate our children, and I'm all for that, even if my children aren't in the schools anymore. I still want those that are coming behind my children to have access to those things. I still want Farmington Public Schools to be a leader in education, that people flock to our town. So I have to pay attention. I have to make sure. And that's yet another thing that you can do to move to action that doesn't actually cause you to have to be confrontational. A large part of action is awareness and education. So, how do we get started? I've given you some sprinkled out as I wanted to point out the bullet points of action in your 7 principles. But I also want to be a little bit more specific about some things. Advocacy is your number 1 way. And advocacy comes in all different forms. See something, say something, right? If you see the man rob the lady walking down the street, and take her purse, I'm not telling you to chase after them, but filming it as opposed to calling the police is not helpful. It's the same kind of idea in social justice. You see something, you say something. Don't give cover to people to be racist or discriminatory against others. Don't make it so that a person of ill intent can feel comfortable sharing that with you. Because as long as they don't have a space to thrive, they'll either go away or they'll go back under the rock they came from. Definitely, since 2018, I have noticed a change, a shift. People of ill intent, people that harbor racist or anti-Semitic views, they are comfortable. They are super comfortable telling you about it. And it's almost like they feel like, whew, finally, I can be me. I really personally don't want them to be comfortable being them. In this instance, I don't want to give them space, and I hope you don't want to give them space either. Join an organization. I don't know about you, but I got 18 million things to do. Adding one more thing is not it. I can speak about CEO and how we do things in CEO. We are cognizant that you have other things to do, but we want to give space for you to be able to be active in the way that's comfortable to you. We have people at CEO who focus on get out the vote, right? A piece of what community equity organization does is we focus on educating voters here locally about who's running for office. We don't care about the presidential election because you got plenty of people throwing millions, if not billions of dollars to educate you on who's running. But what we care about is who's running for Farmington Hills Mayor, Farmington Hills City Council, who's running for Southfield City Council, who's running for the judgeships. In the last election, we invited the county commissioners and the judgeships to a candidate forum down at Liberty Street, on Liberty Street Library, to talk to us about, one, what does your position actually do? Because some of us don't know. I had zero idea what a county commissioner was meant to do before they came and talked to us. The judgeships, how does that impact me? Most people think, unless you are a criminal, you don't really need to care what the judgeships are and who's on the bench. But as we've seen with the attack on Roe versus Wade, or really the overturn of Roe versus Wade, settled law isn't settled. That's number one. Number two, depending on the level they are in judgeship, they have a direct impact on your life regardless of whether you are a criminal. They have impact on how you go about your day, how your health care is affected, or your ownership of assets. We talk about, well, we don't talk about, but in DCDI, we talk about wealth management, right? DCDI is the nonprofit here that focuses on filling the gaps. We talk about wealth management. The Black community has a saying. It's called get it out the mud. When we say we got it out of the mud, what we mean is we've seen growth in our family, generation over generation, right? So it's the movement from maybe you were a slave, maybe you weren't, to being maybe a sharecropper, to being the first to graduate from college, to being first to hold a six-figure job. It's moving, right? So if the judgeships that are over assets, like the probate court, change laws that impact each and every one of you on when your loved one dies and what actually will go to you versus what the court wants to seize, your wealth management is impacted. So you want to care. You want to know who's running. At any rate, I did a diatribe that I said I promised myself I wouldn't get here and then go off on a tangent. So I apologize. Voting is important to me individually because I see the impacts. I feel the impacts. But I want you to understand that you can join an organization, and just because you join the organization and they do 8 things, you don't have to do all 8. Do what you can do. What do you bring to the table? You might be a prolific writer, and they need you to write either the newsletter or help write the newsletter or communications to the public, or they might need help like when you want to write a letter, have a letter writing campaign to the local government. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you're really good at websites and social media and things like that. I hate social media. So, man, when you want to see me just get frustrated, social media, can't stand it. But maybe that's your thing. And so you want to help. We're nothing if we can't get the word out when you're advocating. You have to have an avenue to get the word out. So maybe you're good at social media and you volunteer. Hey, whatever is the word that the writing team wrote up, I'm going to help you get it out there. Maybe that's your thing. Join an organization. Find your way of what is comfortable for you to help that organization move forward for the things you want to advocate for. Financial support. Financial support. This gentleman right here got up and he asked for financial support. He has led your financial support maybe for the last year or two. The easiest way to gatekeep or keep an organization from moving forward is not to fund them. I don't care what it is. You might be fighting to find homes for abandoned kittens. If you don't have financial support for that, nobody's going to know you're trying to find homes for abandoned kittens at all. So it is the same in social justice and in advocacy. Put your money where your mouth is. And you do not have to be Warren Buffett and fund millions upon millions of dollars. $5, $10 goes a long way, because that social media, you know what? They charge a fee to do sponsored ads. It's not a lot. So your $20 here might actually go a long way to do 30 days worth of sponsored ads to get the word out. Don't gatekeep. All right, I'm going to spend a little second here because I think I've talked too long already. Don't gatekeep. What does gatekeeping mean? Well, tell me your name again. Jesse. Jesse would like to be a part of the Blue Woman group. But to be a part of the Blue Woman group, she needs to know Barb. To get to Barb, she got to get through me. Now, I'm not going to let her, because I just don't like the way Jessie wear her hair. It's all kinds of crazy things. So I'm gatekeeping her access. She could be wonderful for the Blue Woman group. She could be fantastic and take us to the next level. But for whatever my reason is, I'm going to gatekeep her away from Barb, and so she never gets in. That's a part of gatekeeping. The other part of gatekeeping is, say we're advocating for something. Advocating for equitable access to resources. I can't say that enough. Haley Stevens posted that she sent $12 million to this area. Can any one of you tell me where that money went? I can't tell you either. And I do advocacy, but I still don't know where the money went. But there are people who know where not only the money went, but you might be friends and breaking bread with somebody that has the money and is sitting on it, and you're not saying anything. You're not helping us understand and get to the root so we can help make a change, because you have the information. So don't gatekeep the information. Don't gatekeep access to people and things that we need. Policies. Anybody like to write policies? I don't like to write them either. But one thing I realized when CEO started is if we could advocate, we could stomp, we could protest, but if we didn't write any policies, doesn't mean anything. It's not enough to just say, be the change you want to see. Write a change. See? Y'all saw that. I saw it. I felt it because I almost said it. Write the change you want to see. And then join groups and build coalitions to get those changes approved. CEO has an education bill. It is to teach accurate African American history and African American representation in education from K through 12. Why? Because in K through 12 is when relationships are formed, when people learn how to treat one another. It's during that time. If you go to school and all you're ever taught is that I'm a slave, I'm not intelligent, wherever y'all got that from, even though, anyway, we won't go into history. The point is in especially K through 5, how you see people, how you learn to treat one another, to show respect, is taught in school. And with the erasure of African American contributions, you erase the ability for these children to understand this group of people. So we have written a policy to change that and make it a requirement to spend a semester or some weeks to learn each school year, so that can help bridge that gap, fill in the gap, and build better relationships and understanding amongst people. The democratic process, be a part of it. This QR code that's up here goes directly to my website. CEO's website, is not mine. And there are different ways that you can get involved. You can see what we're doing and how we focus on bringing equity. Being a part of the democratic process is important, and you can be a part in two ways, as a voter or as a politician. It blows my mind how many criminals run for office, but all the good people are sitting here like, yeah, I'm gonna go vote, I'm gonna go do my duty, but you don't wanna hold office. We need you to hold office. We need like-minded individuals. Let us support you. Run for office. If you have been thinking about being, sitting on a board, boards here in Farmington Hills, I don't know if you know this, but boards here in Farmington Hills are appointed by the mayor. There are so many empty board seats. If you got a little bit of time, some of them are even compensated for your time. Go on the site and see what's open. If you are a like-minded individual that believes in equity, the only way equity will get there is if you sit at the table and make your voices heard. That's part of being a part of the democratic process. Now, if you liked anything that I said today, if you understand what we're talking about in terms of moving to action, if I gave you enough examples and shared with you the importance of moving to action, and you think you want to know a little bit more about community equity organization and see what they're doing, this Thursday, is it this Thursday? Yes, Lord, it's this Thursday. This Thursday at 6:30, we have our next meeting. And actually, we have an organization, Ranked Michigan Vote, who will be there talking about ranked choice voting. It is a movement that's moving across the United States where they want to make it more equitable for you when you vote, that you are not forced into the two-party system of you only get to vote for this one person versus, putting your rank of this is who I would like, but if this person didn't get it, here's my second idea. That's how it was explained to me. You and I will be learning together if you choose to call into the meeting. We always meet via Zoom every second Thursday of the month at 6:30 because we started in COVID and hey, everybody liked it. It was simpler. So we haven't moved away from it. But we do plenty of things that get us to meet one another. So with that, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that in the message that I brought you today, as you think over it, over the next few days or whatever, you find a way or you find pieces that help you move to action. Thank you.
Your talk actually reminded me of a quote that I heard on a podcast, and I think it was something like, you can't be a great leader unless you elevate others. And I thought that it just really mirrored a lot of what you were saying, like just what can we do to elevate and move forward with helping as many people as we can. Our contributions help to support the mission and vision of our beloved community. The projects and people who are served reside among us as brothers and sisters in one human family. perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength. Does anybody have a joy or sorrow? That rest in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, one for the joys, one for the sorrows, and one for the strength of the gathered community that can support you and bring you peace. Please rise as you are willing and able for our second hymn, 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Our closing words are from Reese Williams. Remembering our courageous ancestors who forsook oppression with security to gain freedom with opportunity. May we go forth to master ourselves by accepting duty with responsibility, by showing balance in our judgments, and by having breadth of wisdom in our deliberations. May we be exemplars of that spirit, moving forward with conviction and commitment, with unity, and without uniformity, with brotherhood and sisterhood to serve the truth that sets us free.